Welcome to Rooted in Style. My name is Melanie, and today we're going to discuss how to repot Sansevieria Moonshine. There's a few things that you're going to need for this. The first thing is I like to have some type of mat so that my place doesn't get dirty. And then you're going to need some soil, ideally a chunky mix. I'm using soul soils, but any soil should do. Even regular soil should be okay if you add things like perlite or pumice or something like that to make it a little bit more porous. I also use a scooper, but a spoon or your hands is perfectly fine because I also recommend gloves. So if you want to just use your hands and use some gloves, that's perfectly fine as well. And then you'll need some pots to repot in. So I used a clear 2.5 inch pot, and I used a 4-inch pot. And sometimes at the bottom of it, I like to use these little mesh circles. I don't think you can see that so well. It just prevents the dirt from coming out. You don't have to, it's completely optional. It's also optional to have a rooting powder. Or if you don't want to use a rooting powder, an alternative is to also water it with something like Clonex. I forgot to use the rooting powder when I did this, so I just watered it with some Clonex afterwards. And then you may also want some shears. I recommend sanitizing them with some rubbing alcohol or something. When I initially bought the plant, it was just this one, which you can see it doesn't grow straight up. It kind of grows to the sides for that one. And then I put out this pup, and this pup grows straight out, and I really like it straight up. I don't really care for how the original looked, but I wanted some plants that were good for when you go on vacation. It probably could survive at least a few weeks without watering, maybe a month. I don't think with this one that I've gone a month without watering. I've gone a month with some other ones without watering. So it's great when you travel for long periods of time. Let's get started. So let's get this out of the pot. If you're having difficulty getting it out of the pot, just kind of squish it. And it should come out pretty easily. So we'll remove the soil. As you see, I had a nice chunky, airy soil in this. I don't think I changed the soil. I think this is the soil that it initially came in. I thank you guys for watching my channel. If you are new to my channel, which most of you, if not all of you, probably are, my name is Melanie, and I live in South Dakota, where the winters can be down to -40 Fahrenheit, which is pretty much -40 Celsius, and as high as the 100s in the summertime. That's like 38 degrees Celsius. It's fairly dry here. It's like a desert. We do have sandstorms. They're called haboobs. We had one the first year I moved here, actually. So it looks like, I haven't repotted a Sansevieria in the past, but it looks like when the Sansevieria makes a pup, they connect. I don't know if you can see that well. So I think I should be able to just cut that off to repot it. So I will use some shears. When you do that, make sure that you sanitize them first with a little bit of rubbing alcohol. That should be fine. All right, so I'm back now with my shears, and you can use scissors as well if you want. Like I said, just make sure to sanitize it. And I'm gonna try not to cut any roots. I'm gonna try to cut close to the base because there are some roots that are growing on this outcrop. 3, 2, all right, and there we go. So you can see how this one grew. it does have a very shallow root system. So I'll definitely have to make sure that I don't have the soil too moist. So initially I had this 3 or 4 inch pot that I was gonna put this in, but I decided that it may be a little bit too big, so I'm gonna go with this 2.5 inch pot that I've got here. So when you put it in, you're gonna want it to not necessarily be touching the bottom, but be a little bit of the way up. So I'm gonna switch this with my chunky mix. All right, now we've got a little bit of soil at the bottom. When I put in my Sansevieria, I wanna make sure that it's deep enough that the full root system is underneath. So when I replant my Sansevieria, I'm gonna make sure that the full root system is underneath. And you wanna make sure once it's fully, once you fill the pot with your soil mix, that there's no air holes because that can dehydrate the roots. So see, this is my new repotted Sansevieria. And now let's repot the other one. I think I'm gonna repot it back into its original pot because that seems to be a really good size for it. So if you look, the root system doesn't take up the whole pot, but you can put it deep enough. For this one, I think I'm just gonna use the old soil. Now, since there were 2 plants in here before, I don't fully have enough soil to fill up this pot, so I'll just use some of my other mix and put that on top. Oh, we got a leca ball in there. And it will shrink once you start watering it, so I think I will fill it up a little bit more, just because the soil gets more compact with age. All right, so I've cleaned up my spot now, and it's time to water the plants now that we've repotted them. So, it used to drive me crazy when I first started getting into plants, because everyone would repot the plants, but then no one would show how you water them afterwards. And there's a lot of different thoughts on the process. Some people say thoroughly water it because the soil itself is very dry and it needs the water initially. And that's typically how I do it. So the water, especially in this chunky mix, will go straight through. So it may look like I'm doing a lot of watering, but it really depends on your mix. Because this is a chunky mix, a lot of the water will go through. And because I forgot to use this root powder, what I'll do is I'll water it with my Clonex solution. It helps with root growth just initially. And again, the new shoot I put in the clear pot, so that way I'll be able to keep an eye out on the roots. But as you see, when I water it, this water is going through. I don't know if you can see that, but it is. I'm just doing it until it looks like everything is really wet. And then I'm patting it down just a little bit. Now, if you're using regular soil, you don't want to pat it down too hard because that will get rid of the air bubbles, and that the air inside the soil is necessary to help prevent root rot. All right, now we're gonna water the big one. And this one I put back some of the regular soil so it's not as chunky of a mix. So I think, if you can see how much water, I think that should be enough water going through it, but maybe I'll do just a little bit more because I didn't water that area. Okay. Now it's just the waiting game. So that's that. Time to find some pots to put them in. So I will put my one plant back in its original pot. And I love these. These are called Luna pots. I'll have the link in my description. I get them pretty cheap from my local nursery. I've seen them elsewhere. They're always more expensive. They're actually made by a German company. So for those of you in Europe, you can buy directly from the company if you live in Germany or England. If you're from the US, I found a website that has them the cheapest. I haven't ordered from the website, so I don't know much about it, but it was, I believe it's the same product. So we'll put the main one back in this pot. And then for the little one, we'll have to choose a different pot. And I'm gonna use this terracotta pot that I got at Walmart. Now it initially comes with this little stopper on the bottom. So this terracotta pot has a hole, but they put this plastic stopper in so that the water won't leak. But I just kind of removed that because it made it a little bit off center. So I've got it in this, and it comes with this little saucer, and I think this looks just so cute. So I plan on keeping this one, and this big one I'm probably gonna give away to one of my friends. So that concludes our Sansevieria Moonshine repotting video. I hope that you really enjoyed it. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you liked this. And if you have any recommendations for future videos, feel free to write so in the comments. Oh, my head got cut off. Okay. Oh, I forgot. I was going to use my rooting powder for this.